Hey there, it's me, Mr. B. Plot is a funny word. It sounds like plop. Plop is actually a really good way to describe plot. Authors plop into plots a lot of plot-like things, and some that are plot not. Then there are some plot elements that get plopped into a story that might not seem important, but later in the story they are. Like that invisibility cloak in Harry Potter 1 that seems like a little insignificant, really cool plot element, which then becomes absolutely huge in book 7, Deathly Hallows. And the reader just kind of lets their jaw drop at how cool the storytelling is in that magical series. Magical indeed. But plot is super easy because basically all it is answering the same two questions over and over and over again. Let me plop them into your mind right now. Question 1, what does the character want? Question 2, what happened in the story to either help or hinder them from achieving that goal? That's it. It's really that easy. Any part of the story that adds to the answers of those questions is considered part of the plot. Everything else is just icing on the cake. I love frosting. Let me give you an example. I'm going to read a few pages from Korman's book, Unplugged. But before I do, a little background on the story. The main character, Jet, is the son of a famous businessman who owns Fuego Prime, which is basically like Amazon.com. Jet gets sent to a no-technology summer camp as punishment for all of the horrible and destructive things he has done to upset his father and many others to boot. The part I'm going to read is toward the beginning of his stay at Camp Oasis, where two other campers see huge delivery boxes in front of Jet's room. Now remember, I want to ask those two questions over and over and over again. What does the main character want, and what is helping or hindering them from achieving this goal?
Grace Atwater. Tyrell and I are on the main path back toward the cottages when we see them, strangers standing out at the oasis. But the two men in FedEx uniforms also happen to be lugging an enormous bulky package, wheeling it along on a hand truck. "What's that?" Tyrell wonders out loud. I stare. The thing is covered in brown paper, but the wrapping is torn at the top, and I can see what the giant mystery item is. It's a full-size Dance Dance Revolution machine, the kind they have in video arcades. Tyrell's eyes pop. We're getting a Dance Dance Revolution? It must be a mistake, I conclude. Magnus would never bring an arcade game into the Oasis. He might, Tyrell argues. It's great exercise. That's one of the 3 pillars, you know. No way, I scoff. It breaks the no screens rule. It's flashy and loud, the opposite of everything the Oasis stands for. Nobody could be whole with that kind of racket going on. He shrugs. Only one way to find out. Let's see where they deliver it. We follow the FedEx guys past the dining hall toward the clusters of cottages. We exchange bewildered glances. All the main buildings are behind us. Where could this thing possibly be going? The FedEx man stops at cottage number 29 and unload their burden. I gawk, right next to 2 other packages that are almost as big. One is a jet ski. The other is a 4-wheeled ATV with giant balloon tires. Who lives here? I demand in amazement. Tyrell sniffs the air. If I didn't know any better, I swear I smell meat. We approach the open window and peer inside. Laid out on the dining room table is a mountainous barbecue platter accompanied by several long loaves of bread. Seated there, mouth wide as a cavern, about to take an enormous bite, is Jet. "Drop that sandwich," I bellow. Jet looks up, spots us in the window, and smiles. "Come on in, you guys. There's plenty for everybody." "You're disgusting," I snarl. But Tyrell is already halfway through the door of the cottage. I grab him. "Where do you think you're going?" "I thought maybe I'd have just a couple of bites." "Help yourself," Jet invites him in, his mouth full. "We've got pulled pork, brisket, roast turkey, burnt ends." "You've got barbecue sauce on your chin," Tyrell says wistfully. That's not allowed here," I rage. "Untrue," Jet tells me, his face smug. "The dining hall doesn't serve meat, but show me where it says you can't bring in your own. Turns out there's this awesome barbecue place in Hedge Apple, just a few miles up the river, and guess what? They deliver." I'm looking at him through a red haze. Do they also deliver jet skis and Dance Dance Revolution machines? Well, not the barbecue joint. I got that stuff through Fuego Prime, all except the fireworks. They came from lightupthenight.com. "Don't worry," he adds, spying my stricken face. "You can use all my stuff. Everybody can. Well, maybe not the Buchol's kid. He's not the friendly type. You've got fireworks? Tyrell echoes. Jet inclines his head, and we follow his gaze into his room, where there are 2 large boxes hidden under the bed. For the 4th of July, he explains, or maybe I'll save them for a special occasion, like when Nimbus wises up and kicks me out. I'm so angry, I can't even look at him. When I turn away, I see lanky Brooklyn Feldman on the far end of the patch, peering at the huge packages. Maybe it's her thick glasses, but she makes me think of a CIA agent focusing on a crucial piece of evidence. She's always like that, as if she knows something no one else does. It's okay, I call to her. Just a misunderstanding. Brooklyn walks on, but she seems confused. I don't blame her. A jet ski, an ATV, an arcade machine are about as out of place at the Oasis as a giant oil derrick pumping crude out of the ground next to the bath. I reel back around on Jet. What do you mean by .com? How can you order from the internet? We're totally unplugged. He raises his arms in a gesture of innocence. Oh, what are you saying? Don't try to deny it. You've got to tell. When you're covering up something sleazy, you blink fast. It's a dead giveaway. He looks stricken at being called out, which only makes the blinking speed up. His eyelids flutter like butterfly wings. Actually, he confesses, some of us might still be a little bit plugged. He reaches into the pocket of his shorts and gives us just a glimpse of a sleek, glassy object. A phone? I howl. There are no phones here. Well, there's at least one, Tyrell points out. Suddenly, Jet looks away from us and focuses on his sandwich, chomping and chewing. At the same time, he grabs a handful of meat from the platter and crams it into the side of his mouth. I'm trying to figure out what to do when there are footsteps on the path behind me and a man's voice says, Where did all this stuff come from? We step away to let Matt in through the front door. His attention snaps from the merchandise outside to the sight of his charge stuffing his face with contraband barbecue. I have no respect for Jet, but even I have to be impressed at how quickly he manages to swallow down that enormous mouthful of food and come up smiling. Oh, hi, Matt. Hope you're hungry. Matt is almost as disgusted as I am. You're like a toddler, incapable of thinking 5 seconds into the future. What do you think your father will say when he finds out about this?
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that story, or at least the portion that I read. Gordon Korman is a genius storyteller. But let's take a look at some of these plot elements and decide what is part of the plot and what is plot not. Let's start with a huge plot point. Remembering, we're answering that question, what does the character want? Well, Jet seems to want his rich, comfortable life, wouldn't you too? So he helps himself by ordering expensive things to be delivered to his door. That's key to the plot, because it answers the question, what does he want? Here's something that is plot not. He's sitting down and eating. Yeah, okay, great. Doesn't really move the story though, does it? Yes, it's part of the story, but it doesn't add a great deal to the plot. Another key interesting plot point that we could pick out would be that his friends discover him and try to call him out. This is a plot point because it can hinder him from getting what he really wants. Here's another plot not piece. The 2 other characters are named Grace and Tyrell. Now, characters' names are important. It helps us understand who is in the story, but their names don't do as much for the plot as to what they're doing in the story. So yes, identifying names is important, and knowing which character is which is super important. But knowing what parts of the story add to the plot and which don't is even more important. Let's do one more plot point. What Jet really wants is to get kicked out of the camp. Ordering all that expensive stuff and getting it delivered to his front door was an intentional move because Jet is hoping that he will get told on and then kicked out of the camp because of his bad behavior. It's a win-win situation for Jet because he gets what he wants both ways. Now, as you can imagine, that's not how the story unfolds, and you'll have to read the rest to discover what actually happens to our good friend Jet. Here's another plot not point. I'm going to read this one word for word. Brooklyn walks on, but she seems confused. Brooklyn might show up later in this story and become a key factor to moving the plot along quicker with more tension, but at this point, this line doesn't help us understand the plot very well. It almost doesn't even need to be there, but who knows? If you read on, this small and seemingly insignificant line might become something key. Sometimes your stories will have multiple plots because your author might include more than one character with a specific goal in mind. Each character will have their own goal that they're trying to achieve. These are called story arcs. And the more complex a book is, think The Very Hungry Caterpillar versus Harry Potter, the more characters there are with more overlapping story arcs. Stories with multiple story arcs can be easy to identify sometimes, especially in multiple point of view books like Refugee, Wonder, and the book we just read a selection from, Unplugged. A multiple POV book will have multiple narrators telling the story, each from their own point of view. Every chapter is different because it is being told by someone else. Stories with multiple story arcs that are written from only one point of view, those can get confusing because you have to remember not only what the main character wants, but also what the secondary characters want, and the villain. The more characters in a story, the more complex it becomes. And when you read more complex books, your brain gets better and better at collecting its thoughts and organizing them in an efficient way. The key to unlocking your brain power when reading complex books is to remember what the main plot points are that keep the story going. And you can always figure that out by returning to the 2 questions we started this video out with. Look at us coming full circle! What does the character want, and what happened in the story to either help or hinder them from achieving their goal?